What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Team Raw podcast. So we do our three favorite things: talk a little booze, a little bit of beer, and a whole lot of basketball. And I said little bit. Tell me, I'm gonna try that again.
Nailed it.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Team Raw podcast, where we do our three favorite things: talk a little bit of booze, a little bit of beer, and a whole lot of basketball. Ian, the tall guy, back again for another podcast. Mitch, welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I mean, I have you every time.
I mean, I'm just here always.
I just
but
welcome you to be nice, but you're here every time.
I actually just live with you. I don't do anything but wait to do these podcasts every week. I got nothing else going on in my life.
Wow. What an existence, Mitchell.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a good time.
Well, we are back again for another fun podcast. We are revisiting a series that we kind of started a few months ago, a little while ago. We're not sure how long ago it's been since we've done our last one, but we are revisiting the top five at each position.
Oh, yeah.
Debate.
Yes.
Where we each have our own five lists. We'll read them off and we'll kind of talk about them. We're on small forwards today.
Yeah, we've done the point guards and we've done the shooting guards. We're kind of moving our way down the lineup chart, and we are sitting on small forwards, a notoriously great position in the history of NBA.
A very deep position, the marquee position for a lot of times, a lot of the best players in the NBA. I mean, you have Jordan, who's a shooting guard, but there's a lot of good small forwards out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely there is. But before we get into our top five lists of the small forwards, let's talk a little bit about what we're drinking tonight.
And we're drinking something different today.
We are just a couple of bougie bitches right now because we're drinking wine. I think we've only had wine on the podcast once, and it was barefoot.
I believe we talked Hornets during it. It was like the Hornets deep dive where you just shout out LaMelo. But this is our first red on the podcast. I do remember it was not a red that we drank the first time. So this is our first red on the podcast.
Yeah, so we're drinking a Shiraz, or a Shiraz, as some people like to call it. But the actual winemaker is called 19 Crimes. And if you don't know the history of the 19 Crimes, back in early UK, when people committed one of these 19 specific crimes, it was punishable by sending them off to a deserted random island, which we now know as Australia. Sounds like a great punishment to me, honestly. Send me to Australia. Give me the hell out of UK and send me to the surf and the waves, man. Sounds nice.
But back then, it was not a good thing.
No, it was not a good thing. And some of these 19 crimes are super random. I just had the list up, but one of them is impersonating an Egyptian.
What?
Yeah, here. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna get this back up. Yeah, there's grand larceny. I mean, petty theft. If you under 1 shilling, theft under 1 shilling is punishable by just sending you to another continent.
What a time!
What a time! So there's
impersonating an Egyptian.
Impersonating an Egyptian, yeah, and then stealing. Yeah, there it is. Impersonating Egyptian, stealing from furnished lodgings, setting fire to Underwood. I don't even know what most of these things are. Setting fire to Underwood. But the one that we have specifically is a man named James Keeley. So the fun thing about this 19 Crimes wine bottle is a couple of things. One is that they have several different people that are on the label that were convicted of the crimes and were sent to Australia.
So they have their mugshot, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're looking at the bottom right now, and we're looking at this black and white photo of a guy's mugshot. Basically, is the whole front picture on the front of the bottle.
Yes. And so this guy they have a lot of different people that they'll do, and I'm not totally sure if it's random or if it's per the type of wine that they make, if it's a different person or whatever. But the guy that we have with our Shiraz is James Keeley, who is an Irish fella. He was a convict featured on the 19 Crimes bottles, and his story additionally tells of patriotism and treason. Keeley was arrested for his part in a plot to steal an arms cache and distribute it among the Fenian soldiers. So he was trying to steal a bunch of guns and give it to all of his Irish army buddies.
What a time.
What a time.
Every time I hear it, I'm just everything about this wine is what a time, man.
I'm kind of pro James Keeley.
Yeah, I was I hope he kicked ass in Australia. That's all I'm saying.
What a badass James Keeley was.
Some Irish guy just all of a sudden popping up in Australia. He's like, oh my God, that's a dingo and a kangaroo. But all in an Irish accent, which makes it way funnier.
Exactly. Yeah, Irish accent guy living in Australia. But it's really cool. It's a very, very interesting kind of story that the entire 19 Crimes bottles have. There's an app that you can download, and they have QR codes on the bottles, and you scan it, and then it'll tell you, it'll give you a video, of the whole story of that person.
Yeah, I think it's the app is called Talking Bottles or something like that. It's a cool thing where they basically each bottle comes with its own story.
Yes. And so it's a very unique idea. It's not the most expensive wine in the world. It's very much in your budget, and you can find it at Trader Joe's.
Yeah, and it's a super popular wine. When we were telling some people that we were going to feature this on the podcast, there's a lot of people like, "Oh my gosh, I love that wine. Yes, you should feature it."
So yeah, very, very interesting, cool wine that we have here on the podcast today.
All right, so let's move on from the wine. We'll come back and visit it later. Let's break down this list. We each have our top 5. So let's revisit our series here for a second. Mm-hmm. Each of us have our top 5 list. We have not shown each other our lists.
No.
So we will be revealing to each other and to you guys at the same time. Mitch doesn't know my list, so when I say my 5th, you'll say your 5th, and we'll kind of react to that. And that's kind of what we're going to do as we work our way. We'll start at 5, we'll end up at 1, and we'll just see where we end up.
All right. Sounds good to me.
All right, so you go first. Who do you have at 5?
All right. Hold on. My phone's being slow. I know who my 5th guy is. Oh, dear. Oh, did you just die? But you've been plugged in. Okay. I'm going off of memory. Oh, there we go.
Oh, this is painful.
No, we're good. Okay, so number 5 is one of the OG GOATs. A guy that Michael Jordan at one point said was his favorite player growing up and who he thought was the GOAT growing up, and that's Dr. J.
Dr. J. All right. Interesting. I like
Julius Erving.
Julius Erving. Great player.
So great player. Played for a really long time, actually. So he started off his career in the ABA, the American Basketball Association, where he was playing for the Nets. And then when they did the draft, where it's the ABA draft into the NBA, he just stayed on the Nets as he moved over and was an amazing player. He kind of reinvented the idea of athleticism and what the dunk was in the NBA. And he had a long, long career that extended all the way to the point where he's playing with the Sixers and with Charles Barkley in his early years. So it was he had a very long tenure playing basketball.
Yeah, he played for over 15 years in the NBA. Very long time. Played over 1,200 games. A lot of games. Averaged 24.2 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, 4.2 assists. A Hall of Famer, a 16-time All-Star.
Wait. You said he played 15 seasons.
No, I said over 15 seasons.
I was like, damn, 16 All-Star games in 15 seasons?
He played for over 15 years, 16-time All-Star. He played, let's see, he was drafted in 71 and played till 87.
And is this registering all ABA seasons as well?
Yes, this is registering ABA. So he was drafted in 71 to, the team is abbreviated VIR in the NBA. ABA.
Virginia somethings.
So
Virginia somethings.
In 71, so he was drafted at the age, for example, he was drafted at the age of 21 and played till he was 36.
Okay.
So long time. 16-time All-Star, just an absolute stud. Played 11 seasons with Philly. So his first year with Philly was in 1976, and then he retired there. So he played his whole NBA career for one franchise, but just an absolute stud. I'm looking at some of his nicknames. So obviously everyone knows him as Dr. J, but there's some other ones on here. One of them is the Claw.
The Claw?
He was the original Claw.
I didn't know there was an OG Claw.
Yeah.
Hey.
So that's pretty cool, right?
That's very cool.
I will say, full transparency, I had him at 4.
Okay.
I had him coming in at 4 for me. So you have him at 5. I have him at 4.
Yeah, I had him at 5. So here's some of his career stats. He averaged 24 points per game over the course of his entire career. He averaged 1.7 blocks and 2 steals. He averaged 8.5 rebounds and 4.2 assists. He is so good. Wasn't much of a 3-point shooter, but who was back in the day?
I was about to say, did they even have the line back then?
It says here that they had the line in the ABA. The ABA actually created the line, and then the NBA. Then there was a 3-year gap where they didn't have it, and then in the 79-80 season was the first year they had it, and he was never great at 3-point shooting, but shot 50% from the field, and he was one of the first like big time icons of the NBA. You know what I mean?
One of their
like,
first true superstars.
True superstars that like all the kids growing up like knew of. It was like obviously you knew Wilt and you knew Bill, but the games weren't really on like TV a whole lot back in those days.
And if they were tape delayed.
Yes. And so you didn't really watch a whole lot of the games. When it started like actually gaining a lot of traction and popularity, a lot of that was because of Dr. J. The way that he played the game was so much style, with so much flash, and just being able and just putting up like crazy numbers. People love numbers. And he was one of the guys that like put up big numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a great player. Absolute. I don't know if he's on the Mount Rushmore of basketball, but he's on the conversation for the Mount Rushmore of basketball. Super good player. I'm gonna move on to who I had at number 5.
Yep.
And I have a Laker great, Elgin Baylor.
Oh, we flip-flopped.
So you had him at 4?
He's my 4.
Okay, so
he's my 4.
So I'll make the argument. I had him at 5, behind Dr. J, just because Dr. J played for so long.
Yep.
That being said, you look at Elgin Baylor's stats, and they are equally, if not more, impressive. 27.4 points per game over his 846 game career. He averaged 13.5 rebounds and 4.3 assists. He's in the Hall of Fame and an 11-time All-Star. I mean, another just absolute stat stuffer.
Yeah, I mean, he was a member of that amazing MVP class. Like, there was one year where Oscar Robertson like got the triple-double for like only person to ever average a triple-double. Elgin Baylor, I believe that was the year that he averaged 34 points a game and like 9 rebounds at a game or something like that. And he along with some of these other guys like Dr. J we're talking about, he played in the more of the Oscar Robertson era, but he was so good. And I think did he play for Minneapolis at all?
He did. His first 2 years.
Yeah.
The year you're talking about, I believe, would be the 1960-61 year, where Elgin Baylor averaged 34.8 points per game, so basically 35 points a game, and 19.8 rebounds. So he averaged basically a 35 and 20.
That is crazy.
While shooting 43% from the field. He shot almost 12 free throws a game, 11.8. That is crazy.
That is crazy. Okay, so yes, so it's the 61-62 year actually.
So the year after, which is where he averaged 38.3 points per game and 18.5 boards.
38 points a game, 18.5 boards a game, did not win MVP.
Wow.
Wow.
You think about someone doing that in today's NBA?
Oh my Lord. I mean, that's an automatic MVP.
Yeah.
At this point. And people do like to say like, oh, they're playing against plumbers back in the day. It's like, it's not the same kind of talent. It's like, yes, it's not the same kind of talent, but there's still some awesome talent out there. You were still playing against Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell. And to go out there and put up 38 points per game, not like just once, which is hard enough to do. So I had Elgin Baylor at number 4 because of the ungodly stats that he had, and he's I don't think that he gets as much love from like current NBA fans as what he kind of should, because he kind of flies under the radar as far as NBA superstars of like old lore go.
I would agree. He played in the same era kind of as Bill Russell, and it's hard to kind of make your own headway. One, when you play for the Lakers, just because the Lakers have had so many good players that he kind of gets swept under the rug because he played in that older era. And then he didn't win, all the championships that Bill Russell did.
No, exactly. And I think that he won one championship, right? Does it say on his
looking
on his thing? So
it doesn't say that he won one. I'm not sure that he did.
I'm sure he may not have won one.
10-time All-NBA. He won an All-Star Game MVP, and he was Rookie of the Year. Yeah, he was never a champion.
That's probably where he falls short, because Dr. J had a championship. All these other guys. Jerry West even finished with a championship because he was early Lakers, and then Jerry West played with him, and then Jerry West went on with Wilt to go win a championship. So he's one of those guys that's a no-ringer, which is amazing back in that day as well. But he suffered from the whole Celtics winning 11 straight championships thing. He was like right in the heart of that.
Yeah, and you're
no one was winning.
Yeah, you're not going to win out there, especially if you're, playing on the other marquee team where you're getting the best out of the Celtics every time you play them. The Celtics Lakers had a rivalry back then, just like they do now.
Yeah, exactly. So those are a couple of fun guys to start off with, though, because
a couple of old school guys.
I have a feeling that we're going to have some new school guys as we get going into this list, but it is important to remember that the small forward position has some of the biggest names that you have heard that like over the course of NBA history. Some of the best players ever were playing this small forward position. It's one of the most integral positions in the on the court for you, because you have to have the combination of size and skill when you're a small forward. When you're guards, it's all about skill and speed and quickness and your ability to facilitate. When you're a big man, a lot of it is just how big are you, how athletic are you, how coordinated are you. But you have to combine being 6'8" and being an elite athlete and putting all the skills together when you're that small forward position. And these two guys really put that together, I think.
And it's especially impressive that these two guys were old school guys and as good as they were, because again, back in the day back there, basketball was so run through the big man that the fact that these two were able to do as much and as good and it put up the numbers that they did being smaller guys is impressive, because basically back then, if you were the point guard, your job was to run the motion offense and basically get the best shot for your best player, which 9 times out of 10 was your center. And then everyone else was basically there to play defense.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely because you weren't shooting jump shots a lot of the time. I mean, Elgin Baylor, he thrived because he was such a big athletic guy and he ran through people and got to the hoop a lot. Same with Dr. J. He's infamous for kind of creating the dunk and just going over people at the time. But yeah, you played through the big man because that's what the easy buckets were. And to actually play on the wing like these guys did and have the averages that they had is amazing.
All right, let's move on to your number 3.
All right.
We'll get through 3 and then we'll revisit the wine.
Okay.
We'll get through your 3. We'll see.
We'll see if it's the same.
Yeah.
Okay. My number 3 is a new school guy.
Okay.
And I would not say he's beloved.
I think we're talking about the same player, because I would say my number 3 guy is a new school guy and not very well liked.
Kevin Durant.
Is he a bit of a snake? Because yeah,
he is. Kevin Durant is going to have one of the most interesting conversations as far as legacy goes going forward, because let's say he does win a championship with the Nets this year. Are you still even that impressed? Because all of his championships came with at least one other MVP.
Yeah, he is benefited from the best teammates that any player has ever. I think he is one with the best surrounding talent that any player has ever won with.
Probably. I mean, LeBron obviously had D Wade and Chris Bosh, but then I wouldn't even consider K-Love and Kyrie to even be close to Kyrie and Harden.
And I would put Steph, Clay, and Draymond over D Wade and Chris Bosh.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really
Steph
close.
is coming off the only unanimous MVP in the history of the league.
And then Kevin Durant's I'm going to play with that guy.
And then, oh wait, now I can team up with Kyrie and James Harden, 2 of the greatest, smaller players in the history of the league. Yeah. So
sign me up.
It's going to be an interesting career evaluation once he hangs it up, because he's going to have the numbers. He's on pace to break the scoring champ, be the best, highest overall scorer in the history of the NBA. He's going to, be the all-time points leader if he continues his current pace.
Yeah, the all-time points leader, not points per game.
Yeah,
because
all-time points leader. I phrased that poorly.
No, you're all good.
But he's also, going to go down as one of the most dangerous players in the NBA because he's 7 feet tall. He handles like a guard. He can shoot the best small forwards out there. He can shoot he could play really good defense. He could block shots like a 7-footer can. So he can kind of do it all. But again, he just rubs so many people the wrong way.
Which is so funny because early in his career, he was one of the more well-liked players in the entire league. His early mid Thunder days, he was kind of known as like the good old Christian boy, doesn't do anything bad, always stays to himself. He's the one that's willing to kind of play with Harden and with Westbrook, and he like is willing to like kind of give into the team aspect. And as soon as he made the switch from the Thunder to the Warriors, everything about his public perception changed. Everything.
He kind of bought into the villain. He was like, wait, I can be hated. I thrive off that. And then, all the burner accounts came in, and then all the, foul mouth rants that he's been on, and all the just hatred for people, and all the super defense. There is not a more like athlete in the public eye with thinner skin than Kevin Durant.
Yeah. He's the most insecure.
He lets things get to him so easily.
He really does. He like one random kid on the internet will say something and he's on his burner account trolling him. Like the fact that he got caught with a burner account
and he
by
owns
himself.
it.
Yeah,
he owns it. He's like, yeah, that was me. Yeah, I told that 13-year-old those things.
Yeah, I told that 13-year-old to fuck off. What, you disagree? Yeah, so obviously one of the greatest talents that we've ever seen. The dude is 7 feet tall. He handles the ball like a guard. His release on his jump shot is so high that there's really no like defending it. Even if you put Giannis out there, who's probably the best comp you have as someone to go and defend a guy like Kevin Durant, you're still not even getting close to him on his jump shots. He's just going to be he pretty much just takes open jump shots all the time, and it's whether he makes it or misses it. And he is one of the freakiest players that we've ever seen play in the NBA. With what he can do at his length and at his size is amazing. And so that's why he has to we have to say that he is top 5, even if we don't like him.
Easily top 5. I think he's a surefire top 3. I mean, you could have him higher. I don't think you can have him lower. I think by the end of his career, he will be number 2. Mm-hmm. Just because he's going to put up the numbers to be number 2. That being said, it will be a question mark on how many of his championships go he won that one. I think
he played with Steph.
I think you can do that to every single one he's won so far.
Yes.
And I think it's very interesting to one of the biggest what ifs in the history of the NBA is what would the legacy of Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Kevin Durant be if they were able to pull off that first championship that they made it to in Oklahoma City way back when?
Do they stick together? Do they still break apart because all of them think that they're MVP level talents and they're like, oh, I need to get paid. I need to get my numbers. Do they break up even faster after that? Do they stick together? Do they become one of the greatest legacies, greatest teams of all time? Who knows?
Because that was a super team, but that was a homegrown built super team. That team was
young.
All drafted by the Thunder. That wasn't like a Durant joining the Warriors, LeBron joining the Heat, all the superstars coming together to do it. This was a homegrown super team. And if they were able to find a way to win that series, where would they be now? I think it would be completely different. That's a whole nother podcast that we can get into maybe at another time.
Yeah,
but that is
the What If podcast.
But that is definitely something that would, I think, change Kevin Durant's perception a lot.
And also another big what if is, what if they actually beat the Warriors when they were up 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals the year before Durant left? If they actually win and go to the finals, does Durant even bother going to the Warriors in that offseason? Does that change the way the Warriors are perceived or the way that Durant is perceived? So he is going to go down as everyone obviously knows how great Durant is. He's found himself more in the villain role than the hero role, which is a complete 180 from his early career.
Which I think is what he wants. I think he enjoys it.
I don't know if he wanted that. I think that it just started happening when he left for the Warriors and everyone's like, oh, you're a snake, man. Like nobody likes you anymore. And he was like, okay, that's fine. You don't have to like me. I'm just going to go win finals MVPs and championships and you can continue to hate me. I think he kind of rolled with it when it happened, but I don't know if it's what he wants. I think he wants to be liked.
For a guy who wants to be liked, he sure has a weird way of showing it.
He's doing a bad job of it so far. He's really leaned into it lately. Yeah. But yes, Durant at number 3, I think makes a ton of sense because, Kevin Durant.
Yep, he is very good. Let's jump back into this wine. Let's talk taste a little bit. Let's break down what the flavors we're seeing here in terms of this 19 Crimes.
Okay, so the first thing is that it's a Shiraz, but I think that people call it a Shiraz. Shiraz is made typically with more dark-skinned grapes and kind of like a variety grown throughout the world, similar to almost red blends. So it's a darker red, but it's not like a Cabernet, which a Cabernet is kind of an intense flavor, and like it's sometimes can almost be like ripping the enamel off your teeth if you're not getting like really really nice cabs. But a Shiraz is much lighter and fruitier and is a little bit more like palatable, I think, for your like intro wine taster.
Yeah, it's definitely fruity. You definitely get the sweetness. It's a very sweet wine, but it's also very dry. Mm-hmm. It's a very dry wine as you sniff it and give it the little swirl.
So here I'll tell you what my dad taught me is you give it a swirl, you give it a sniff, then you give it just a little, and you're supposed to like kind of make it swirl in your mouth a little bit, and you go rigid, yet approachable, and that's it. And then I'll don't say anything else, and wine people will be like, oh, okay, must like it.
He must know what he's talking about.
He must know what he's talking about. Anytime I'm at like any kind of wine tasting thing, I do that, and I don't say anything else.
You get one of them. You get one of them before someone realizes that he's saying that to every wine.
My good buddy Reed is he's a big wine aficionado. He is a member at a couple different wineries in Portland and whatnot. And I pull that out all the time. He just looks at me. He's like, "Come on, man. Do you have anything actually to say?" I was like, "I don't know. It tastes like old grapes."
For this particular one, you definitely get a lot of sweetness. You definitely it's very dry, which I personally like in my reds.
Yes.
So it's a very dry wine, but it's also like very smooth.
Yes, I like it. So I am very much a Pinot Noir kind of guy. That's what Portland and Oregon is very famous for in their Willamette Valley. And the Shiraz is just a little bit different. The grapes are a little bit darker, and it comes out with a little bit more of a dry flavor, like you're talking about, almost like, not in a bad way, but like a little bit more chalkiness to it than your really light other wines. But I like this a lot, especially for barring it being like a $10 bottle, like a very affordable bottle, this 19 Crimes. I really like it. I could sit here and just kind of sip on this all night.
Yeah, it's definitely one that is very, very popular, at least out here in the DFW area. A lot of people I know have this. It's like a good date wine because it's nice, it tastes good, it's got a cool icebreaker story, but it doesn't break the bank.
Yeah, you know what? This is the first date wine.
First date wine.
The best first date wine there is. That is our best promotion for 19 Crimes right now. You're going on a first date, get 19 Crimes.
Because you'll be able to break the ice with a good story, and then they'll be like rigid yet approachable.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden you're in.
And then she's like, "Damn, this guy knows wine."
And he's mysterious because he likes criminals and he knows wine. Oh my gosh,
who doesn't love a good crime story? It's like a crime podcast with alcohol in it.
All right, let's jump back into our list here. We have number 2 and number 1 left to go.
I have a feeling that we're gonna have similar ones. So why don't you tell me who's your number 2?
Okay, my number 2 is probably on the Mount Rushmore of basketball.
I have him on my Mount Rushmore. If it's if it's the same guy,
he is one of the first trick shot artists ever because of the ability he did. He played a whole game left-handed one time just so he could.
It was against the Blazers,
and that is Larry Bird.
Yeah, dude, that game came right after a game against the Lakers where they just dominated the Lakers. And then he was doing his press conference. They're like, "What are you going to do next?" Like, "I don't know. I'm feeling kind of bored. I think I'll just play left-handed." And I was like, as a joke, and then went out there and played the entire game left-handed, and I'm pretty sure he dropped like 30 points.
And if you ever need something fun to watch, look up those highlights because he literally takes so many random shots that don't need to go the way that they do, but he has to because he's playing left-handed.
Yeah.
He makes it so much more difficult on himself just because he can.
If I'm the coach, I'm just sitting there like, am I going to tell him not to? It's Larry Bird. It's Larry Bird. He's just going to do whatever he wants to do. Larry Bird is amazing for so many reasons. One
of the most confident players ever. I'll never forget, and I wasn't around at the time, but I've seen the clips and I've read it. But when he showed up at the 3-point contest and just walks in and says, "Hey, which one of y'all is coming in second today?"
And everyone looks at each other. I think one guy's like, "Me." Yeah, so Larry was one of the most cocky, confident guys. From all the stories that have been told, he is one of the biggest trash talkers in the history of the NBA, which is, he's just like a farmer boy, from Indiana, just like this, especially in an era where it wasn't very popular to be like the white guy on the court, right? And he played for the Boston Celtics, this is a huge story for Larry because it was him and Magic, and it was the fact that Larry was white, Magic was black, and they were going at it to each other, and that was one of the biggest storylines of their career. So it's like you kind of have to mention this, but people did not see a white guy talking trash the way that he did, and he went at everybody. He absolutely torched everyone, and he was doing stuff like he was like shooting it, turn around, looking at the bench, kind of like Steph does. Or he was like, hey, by the way, I'm going to go left, cross right, and I'm going to shoot it right in front of your face because you know exactly where it's going to go. And he would do that and hit it right in front of your face. The stories that I hear about Larry is so fun and so amazing. And he played in the era that really made the NBA boom the way that it did.
I was about to say, him and Magic, because they're the yin and the yang, right?
Yes.
You can't have one without the other.
Yeah, polar opposite guys.
But needed each other to do well, but also thrived with each other, are now great friends, and like are ambassadors of the NBA now. And those two might be the two most important players in NBA history.
Yeah.
Because of their rivalry in college, their rivalry in the NBA, their showtime versus the hard work versus the grit and grind versus the flashy, all this stuff that culminated in this like great, just must watch television.
Yeah. And you know what's funny about the Larry and Magic thing is when they played each other for a long time, and they played each other in the state champion or in the NCAA championship against each other with Michigan State and Indiana State. They get drafted 1 and 2. They join the league at the exact same time. I mean, you can't write this story any better. And I think that most people will agree that Magic had the better career. Magic had a longer career, even though his was shortened because of his AIDS problem. But Larry had major back problems early on, and it kind of took him out early. But Larry had major back problems, sorry. But Larry was better early on. Like, Larry earned MVPs and 3 straight MVPs when no one else had really done that. Larry was and won championships.
Larry had more championships than Magic.
We'd have to look that up. Because I know that Magic won a couple more as the years went on. I know Magic won the very first one, his rookie year, when he stepped in and played center in like Game 6 of the finals. So I know Magic had the first one, but I think Larry, he ended up winning more, but he was the better player initially when Magic turned out to be the better player later on. But yeah, Larry is one of my favorite players. I love going back and watching his highlights because it's just wild stuff that he was doing. He, like you were saying, he's like the original trick shot guy.
Yeah. Here we go. So we're gonna run through some of his stuff here.
Let's do it.
We got into talking to him. I didn't even get to talk his stats. 24.3 points per game, 10 rebounds, 6.3 assists for his career. Played about 13 years. He's a Hall of Famer, a 12-time All-Star, 3-time NBA champion, 10-time All-NBA, 3-time All-Defensive player.
He was really good at defense.
He was an All-Rookie team. He was an All-Star Game MVP. He was a 2-time Finals MVP, a 3-time League MVP, and he was also the Rookie of the Year in the 79-80 season. So beat out Magic for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. Yeah, so he won Rookie year over Magic. Magic ended up winning the championship that year, so he's got that over him. But Larry, he is arguably on the Mount Rushmore. He's probably the guy that a lot of people are now kicking off because you got new guys coming in that are probably going to be on the Mount Rushmore. Maybe you only want one Celtic, you put Bill Russell in over him, or because the Mount Rushmore at this point, that'd be a fun thing to talk about at some point, is who would be on your Mount Rushmore. But to me, I think that Larry's like the fringe Mount Rushmore guy, but he's certainly top 10 of all time. Probably top 5, but like bridging right there into that top 5, top 7-ish area.
He is an absolute just legend in the NBA arena. And again, we can talk about this another time, but just as much for what he did for basketball as what he did on the court. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like he made basketball the flashy what it was today with him and Magic and bringing it into a mainstream sport.
Yeah, it's when the TV deals really started bringing basketball like onto the main platforms. like going forward. And I think I remember hearing about how ESPN like really leaned into the Magic and Larry thing. That was one of their biggest narratives when they were first becoming a network, is like, hey, let's use this storyline because they were right. It was the greatest storyline in the history of basketball.
Maybe sports.
And maybe sports. Because the two guys, they couldn't have been more different, and they played on the Celtics and the Lakers, different coasts, rivals, always played in the finals against each other, always competing for MVPs. Like, they were like just the 1 and 2 guy forever. And the Hick for French Lick just turned out to be something that I don't think anyone else thought that he could be, because he was one of the like great original 3-point shooters as well. Kind of brought that part into the game. I love me some Larry. I could boast about Larry all day.
Yeah, absolutely. But we cannot. We must move on.
We must move on.
And the guy we're going to talk about next, I'm assuming you and I have the same guy, but he is definitely on the Mount Rushmore of basketball. He might be on the Mount Rushmore of sports in general.
Nicholas Batum. No? Is that not who you had at number 1?
No. But just one of the most influential people in today's world, and that is LeBron James.
Yes. LeBron James, I mean, we all, like, LeBron was
just a kid from Akron.
He's just a kid from Akron who was nicknamed King James at 17 years old. LeBron, he was the superstar of our era, right? So it's like I'm 27, you're 24, like, we grew up watching LeBron. I didn't grow up watching Michael Jordan. I've heard about Michael Jordan. I didn't grow up watching Larry. I've heard about Larry. I've gone back and watched tapes, and I've watched full games because I'm like an NBA nerd like that. I loved doing that. But I grew up in the LeBron era, and he dominated the NBA. Till now. I was like 7 years old when he first joined the NBA, and he's still dominating.
He doesn't do things that no one else can do but he is just built so differently than everyone else is. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, the whole phrase "I'm built different" that is LeBron.
He doesn't like shoot it from super deep or do anything, like, doesn't have a crazy handle or, but he just was a freak of nature that could just drive to the hole, run everybody over, and dunk or lay it up or, And then it wasn't until the end, or like not the end, but like the last like 5-6 years where he developed, this mid-range game that he's this little turnaround shot. He's very similar to Kobe's career arc, to where like he was so athletic and so built different that he just relied on that for a long time, and it worked. Obviously, he's a great player, and I'm not saying he wasn't talented. It took talent, but he also took his freakish build, and now he's developed this finesse part of the game that is just. He like fine wine. He has aged.
He has
into this great player at 36 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
Just wild.
Yeah, LeBron's career arc is fascinating by itself. Drafted to the Cavs from Akron, hometown team, is pretty much like, oh, well, if you're not an all-time great basketball player, then you didn't live up to your potential. That's a lot of pressure right there. Just as an 18-year-old kid coming into the league as a number 1 pick, he was loved. In his first stint with Cleveland, he was absolutely adored. He is the new kid on the block. He was putting up big stats. He wasn't like thick at that point. He was kind of like long and lanky and had hops like crazy. And I think the thing with LeBron his entire career was his basketball IQ was just on a different level than everyone else's, even when he was younger. But loved in Cleveland. Then
took him to a finals.
Backpacked
him to a finals with, I think the second best player on that team was Ilgauskas. I don't even want to pretend to say his first name. I think it was Zydrunas Ilgauskas. Yeah, just
Big Z.
Which, if you're not a deep dive basketball guy, you have no idea who I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I think like Damian Jones was a starter on that team. I think Daniel Marshall was a starter on that team. So it was kind of a bum ass Cleveland team, and LeBron backpacked them to a finals. That was like your first like stint of, oh my gosh, this guy is amazing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was, oh, I'm going to go to Miami, and did the whole decision thing. Rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
Where he had like a whole TV show dedicated to announcing where he was going to play next.
Yeah, an hour-long TV show, which
if you're from Cleveland, you have to know that that's not good.
Yeah.
When he's like, oh, I'm going to have a TV show that's going to decide where I'm going to go. That you're like, well, if he was coming back, he probably would have just said he's coming back.
Well, I don't know if you've heard about this, but David Stern caught wind of it
Yes, I have heard about this.
Before it was going to
everything
happen.
in his power to stop it because he knew it was going to look terrible on LeBron.
Yes. He did everything he could. He was calling ESPN and begging them not to air this. And he was like calling LeBron's people and like begging him, like, do not, like, just sign somewhere. Like, don't make this a giant thing because everyone's not going to like you if this happens. And David Stern was looking into his, his crystal ball because he was very right about that.
Yes.
I mean,
definitely went to Miami, became the villain. He did what Kevin Durant did and became the villain. And then my Mavs, silenced him a little bit.
Took care of business right there.
Heck yeah, we did. But went to Miami, won a couple of ships there, played with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh on the first era of super teamism.
Yeah, it was one of the original, it's one of the first times where players were kind of you're really good and you're really good. Let's all just find a team that with cap space and go play on that team. Like LeBron didn't care that it was Dwayne Wade's Heat team. Like Dwayne Wade still is kind of the face of the Miami Heat, where LeBron was like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I just want to go and play for a great, great team. And a lot of people, this is actually Dr. J came out earlier this year and talked about how LeBron's not on his top 5. He wasn't on his top 10, and he blamed LeBron for the superstar movement and all of the super teams that happened now. Because a lot of beforehand, it was natural homegrown super teams, like the Spurs or even the Celtics with McHale and Bird, they were drafted there or whatever. So he became this icon for what the NBA kind of is today, as far as the super teams and players choosing what teams they want to go to, which isn't a bad thing. I'm all for players going where they want to go.
It's not a bad thing, and it also made the NBA a lot more fun because it made the trade deadline super entertaining, and it made free agency super entertaining, and all these teams just stockpiling weapons and all this, you know what I'm saying? It made the offseason and the player movement part of basketball a lot more fun, but it did make it to where you knew which 3-4 teams were going to be competing for championships every year. Which
was everyone's issue with the NBA was, there's no parity. If you're a baseball fan or if you're an NFL fan, you went into it being probably the Patriots will be there near the end of the year, but you didn't know if they're going to win the Super Bowl or not. But you knew for a fact that the Heat were going to be in the championship. You just knew that they were going to make it to the finals. And so it made it a little bit less, it made it fun because the talent on the court was probably the best there's ever been, but it also made it less fun for all the other market teams that wanted to have a chance.
Yeah. But then he went back home.
And that turned a lot of people's minds. It turned mine. I was full on board, you know what? I hate LeBron James. I hate what he did to the NBA because I'm a Portland fan. Ain't no superstars coming to Portland. I know this. You know this. And I was like, screw LeBron James. And then he went back to Cleveland. I was like, you know what? Good move, man. That was the best PR move he could have done.
When they came back 3-1, I'm not going to lie. I was standing up. I was clapping. I was cheering. I was all for LeBron doing this crazy comeback. I mean, this was before the Warriors were hateable, right? So I was very excited for it.
Yeah, and that little era right there of the LeBron Cleveland teams and this epic Warriors team going at it 4 years in a row is kind of crazy, right? And you don't see it a lot where two teams play each other 4 times in a row, almost half a decade of just two teams playing against each other.
Well, keep this in mind. LeBron went to the finals 9 years in a row.
Yeah.
One guy
dominated the East.
The best player on his team in the finals, 9, that's a decade of him just dominant.
East Coast dominance.
And by the way, it only ended because he went to the West.
Yes, exactly. He went to the West and he played with a bunch of young kids with the Los Angeles Lakers at the time, and that he got hurt, and there was all sorts of excuses for why they didn't make the playoffs, and it's it's not LeBron's fault. Yeah. It could never be LeBron's fault. But
his move to the Lakers was one that was it was weird, but also everyone kind of got it. It was all right, LeBron, this is a business decision move. He's going to LA. He's going to the big flashy bright lights of the Lakers, but he's also going to be in Hollywood.
Yeah.
He's going to, get into movies. He's in Space Jam right now. He's going to, grow his business. I think this year is when he's on pace to become a billionaire with a B. And I know that was one of like his big goals when he like got into the NBA was to like market himself and diversify everything. And, he's one of the more well-known and smart businessmen in sports.
Yeah.
In terms of athletes.
So I'll go all the way back to there was one specific offseason where I think that it was the offseason where he decided to go with Miami. Or like he got an extension with Miami. And there was a chance for him to pair up with Carmelo in Chicago. And they're both debating like whether they go to Chicago. But LeBron, he ended up deciding he's like, I'm going to take a 2-year deal. Like, I'm just going to take a 2-year deal. Melo was like, no, I want the bag. And he took the full 5-year like Supermax extension that they had at the time.
With New York.
And so he stuck with New York. LeBron stuck with Miami. And then LeBron it was very coincidental that his next offseason, where he had his next contract, came up with the cap boom. When the cap boomed, and then LeBron got paid even more than Melo did long term. And so that was just one of the very few things that like LeBron is like Rich Paul is probably a big part of this. And like that's his buddy who created Clutch Sports and like has been his agent, like his best friend from
which is one of the best agencies in the NBA.
Yes. Yeah. And so he ended up getting paid more than Melo did, even though Melo got the bag early. LeBron knew how the cap structure was actually going to work, and then he got paid more, and he's only been living off 2-year deals his entire career.
Yeah, and he's a part owner of multiple different franchises. He's has his hand in many different businesses, from food to entertainment to a bunch. He's got his hand in millions of things. He's the producer on several different, TV shows. Like, he's got his hand in everything, and all of it is about him making money, which I'm not saying he's like Mayweather where he's just monetarily driven. I mean, he gives back more than any player in the NBA.
Yes, he does. He absolutely does. Like starting that big time school in Ohio for underprivileged youth. I think LeBron, everyone knows that he is one of the biggest icons in the world right now. And I think that he falls short sometimes. Like, he says stuff where every once in a while you're like, whoa, what was that? But you can tell that he always wants what's best. He is trying to do what he thinks is best for the world. And he knows that his voice is a very, very popular voice that everyone is going to be listening to every time he tweets something, anytime he Instagrams something, anytime he's on the microphone. He's one of the most like listened to people in the entire world right now.
Yeah, and I'm about to get into his stats and break that down a little bit before we wrap up here. But I also need to say, like, this guy has been in the limelight under the microscope of fame since 18 years old, and then has not been in trouble once.
Yeah.
Like, that has to go for some. I mean, in today's world, athletes get in trouble all the time for something or other, for saying something stupid, for doing something stupid, for being a dick. You get in trouble at any point. Other than his business decisions for where he goes in terms of signing with the Heat, signing with the Lakers, which rub people the wrong way, he has not been in trouble once.
No, not like actual scandals.
Yes.
Not like actual like, oh
people
my
may
God.
hate him for whining on the court or, building super teams or whatever. But in terms of nitty gritty down to the like real life problems, he has not been in trouble once.
Yeah, which is amazing. And I think it's a testament to LeBron knowing who he is and what he means to like
and just
our
being
society.
good at being famous.
Yeah, he's pretty good at being famous. He knows how to play. He's
that's
played
a
his
skill.
cards very well, and he's learned it. He learned that very early on.
All right, so let's break down his career stats real quick.
Yeah,
real quick. He's played over 1,300 games.
It's wild.
And it's still games. In the MVP conversation.
Yeah, and he's going to be for the next couple years.
He's averaged 27 points per game, 7.4 rebounds, and 7.4 assists for his career. And by the way, we don't need to break this down completely, but one of the most underrated passers in the history of the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
He is very good at passing. He will end his career probably in the top, if not very close to the most assists. This all-time assist leader.
So he'll have a hard time passing Stockton because Stockton was like so much higher than everyone else. But yes, that goes down to the whole like LeBron's biggest skill is his basketball IQ. the way that he sees the game. I think it was earlier this year when DeMar DeRozan made some comment where he's like, yeah, it was the Eastern Conference Finals and we were playing against LeBron and they called a play. And I looked over, I was like, wait, what was the play? And LeBron's like, oh no, you're supposed to do this and then do that. He like told the DeMar DeRozan what the play is that they're about to run. It was like his.
Oh, thanks, LeBron.
His vision and his basketball IQ is second to none.
Yeah, but so in his career, 17-time All-Star. He's been the scoring champion once, 4-time champion, 4-time NBA champion, 16-time All-NBA. Here's one that's weird: 6-time All-Defensive Team. Surprising.
Is it surprising that it's not more, or is it surprising that it's as high as it sits?
Well, he kind of has a rap for having a bad, not caring about defense. He's been all defense.
It's a good
6
point.
times.
Yes.
All rookie team, 3-time All-Star Game MVP, 4 times Finals MVP, 4-time League MVP. That should be higher, and was Rookie of the Year.
I mean, it's him and MJ.
It's him and MJ.
It's him and MJ. There is a giant mountain of people that have played in the NBA, and it's tiered all the way up to the tip with great players along the way. And there at the very tippy top, we got 2 guys.
Yeah.
And you can argue either one. You really can. At this point, like, some people are going to be diehard MJ guys, and some people are going to be diehard LeBron guys, and they're just never going to give up on that guy. There's nothing really that either could do that would make you change your mind, right? But the fact is, those are the top 2 guys.
Yeah, and the fact that there is a conversation is just showing how good LeBron really is.
I mean, for the longest time, if you were the best at what you did, you were the MJ of it. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're the best paper airplane maker, you're the MJ of paper airplane makers. And that's what you were called for the longest time. And so it's amazing that LeBron has gotten to this point to even be in the conversation with him, because LeBron has had an amazing career.
Absolutely amazing. And number 1 of the small forwards list. Very happy to wrap up our list. We were the same 3 through 1, and we had the same 5 players. We just had 4 and 5 flipped.
Yeah. And, there's some other crazy guys that we could have put on this list. And just to I want to give a little honorable mention to show how deep the small forwards are. Here's the other guys I thought of but didn't put on: Kawhi Leonard, Scottie Pippen, John Havlicek, Carmelo Anthony, Paul Pierce, Rick Barry, Chris Mullins, Grant Hill, Tracy McGrady, Dominique Wilkins, Adrian Dantley, Paul George, Bernard King, Alex English, James Worthy, amongst a whole nother list of other of great small forwards that there have been. But I think that our top 5 really is that top 5.
Yep, absolutely. Well, that wraps up this podcast. Shout out for 19 Crimes joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're thanking a bottle.
I am. Hey, I thank bottles more than I probably should.
But yes, try it out. First date wine. Give it a go. Solid first date wine. 19 Crimes. Thank you for joining us. Cheers, brother.
Cheers.